The Gentle by Se-Jin Han. James, 54, sarcastic and cynical, must become a manager to avoid layoff. His superior swindles to fail him. James stays cool and his luck changes. Copyright 2011, Se-Jin Han. Fade in. Interior, lunchroom, day. James, 54, Tom, 48, and Colby, 37, walk in. 3 empty tables take most of the space in the room. James takes a seat while Tom and Colby pour coffee from the coffee pot into their mugs. They all wear jeans, t-shirts, and work shoes. Their outfits show wear and tear but clean. James takes out a sandwich and a can of soda out of his lunchbox. Tom and Colby take a seat. They also pull out their lunches out of lunch bags. Colby: I hear there will be layoffs. James: This company needs a new CEO. We will be all rich if they make me the CEO. Tom and Colby laugh and give thumbs up. Colby spills coffee, then gets some napkins to wipe the spill. James: I'll offer free steak lunches for everyone every day. Tom: You'll be my favorite CEO. James: And you will be my favorite manager. Russell, 60, walks in. Russell: Who's your favorite manager, me? Russell empties the last cup of coffee into his mug. Russell leaves. James: Our manager left us with an empty pot. Later. James' steak would have been nice, but a meal is a meal. Tom's steak sounds fantastic. James finishes his soda, tosses the can in the recycling bin, and leaves. Colby: He would be the next manager if he can be a little more gentle to the management people. Tom and Colby get up, pour more coffee into their mugs, and leave. Exterior, apartment, day. James comes out of his apartment and walks toward an old compact car in the parking lot. The paint of the car shows wear and tear. James gets in the car and turns the ignition. The car makes a cranking noise, then stops. Sandra, 50, opens a window from the apartment. Sandra: Hey, honey, don't forget the groceries. James looks at Sandra from inside the car and nods. His car makes cranking noise. James giggles. Sandra: What's so funny? James: You are just like this car. High on mileage, so hard to get started. Sandra: What? I can't hear you. The car finally starts. James drives out of the parking lot onto the street. Exterior, in front of church, day. James drives toward a church. An empty parking lot surrounds the church. A banner on the wall reads, Blessed are the gentle, for they will inherit the land. James: Blessed are the gentle? Really? I have something for you guys. James stops his car, grabs an empty coffee cup and fast food containers from the floor of his car, and then dumps them in the church garbage bin. Interior, company meeting room, day. Russell talks to James, Tom, Colby, and a few others. James, Tom, and Colby sit together furthest away from Russell. Russell: If you volunteer to be laid off, you will get extra benefits and compensation. James whispers. James: Live free for 3 months and die hard. Russell: Please pick up information package on the way out. Everyone picks up a package and leaves. Russell: James, I need to talk to you. Let's go to my office. James: Now? I was going to take a break. Russell: Come to my office after your break then. Interior, manager's office, day. Russell sits at his desk. The title on the nameplate reads, Production Manager Russell Bull. He goes through a large stack of file folders. James walks in. Russell, have a seat. Let me get right to the point. Your name is at the top of the layoff list. James: Are you sure it's not the list for pay raise? Russell: Now listen, I am retiring after I finish this layoff business. You are a candidate to take over my job. James: Great. I'll either be laid off or be the next manager. Russell: Exactly. The company will examine your leadership and personality in detail. James: Personality? Got it. Russell: We'll see if you got it. Exterior, in front of church, day. James drives toward the church. The banner still reads, Blessed are the gentle, for they will inherit the land. When James sees it, the word gentle gets magnified. James pulls into the parking lot. Then he walks toward the entrance. James: This is it. Be gentle. Be the manager. Pastor Paul, 32, is working on the roof. Paul: Hello, can I help you? James looks around but sees no one. Paul: I'm up here. James looks up and sees Paul. Paul climbs down the ladder. A wrench slips out of his waist and drops right next to James. James: Jesus, are you trying to kill me? Paul smiles and rubs dust off his hands. Paul: I am Pastor Paul. James. I'm James. You are the pastor? Paul stares at the cross on the roof and takes a deep breath. Paul, senior pastor, passed away last year. James. He must have gone to heaven? Isn't it a good thing? Paul. I guess I wanted to work with him a little longer. James. Can we talk inside? Interior. Church office. Day. A computer, stacks of printed papers, file folders neatly cover the space on the desk. Boxes of canned food and used clothes completely fill the shelf along the walls. James. How is the church doing? Is it growing? Paul. Most of the people left after the senior pastor passed. James. Sorry to hear that. Paul. Have you been going to church for long? James. I pass by this church every day, but it's the first time to come in here. Paul. What can I do for you? James. You can teach me what the gentle do. Cindy, 7, knocks on the open door. Paul. Cindy, where's your mom? Cindy. Hello, Pastor. My mom wants to know if you need any help. Paul gets up, puts some canned food in a grocery bag, and then hands it to Cindy. Paul. Tell your mom to check back in a day or two, all right? Cindy nods and leaves. Paul goes to his drawer cabinet and pulls out a file folder. He sits down and briefly goes over the file in the folder. Paul. What do the gentle do? I think I can show you a few things about that. James. How much would you charge? Paul. You are a neighbor, so we'll help you. You can help us back in many ways. Mrs. Simmons, 62, knocks on the open door. Paul. Mrs. Simmons, what's up? Mrs. Simmons. Pastor, we are finished. Everyone left and I locked up the room. Mrs. Simmons leaves. Paul. I want you to do this exercise. Find the inner self in both you and your wife. James. Inner self? Paul. It's the image of God. Try to find that in you and in your wife. Interior. Apartment. Night. Sandra watches TV. James stares at Sandra. Sandra. Why do you keep staring at me? Are you going to say something? James shakes his head and watches TV. Sandra must be losing it. James. I heard that, honey. Sandra. Why don't you do something useful? There's nothing exciting about my face. A dog strolls in. James and the dog stare at Sandra. Sandra looks back at them. James puts a leash on the dog and leaves. Interior. Apartment. Day. Sandra massages her face sitting at a dresser. A bottle of skin lotion alone occupies the space on the dresser. James. Sandra, why would you take 30 minutes to put on lotion? Sandra. Mind your own business. I got time, that's why. James picks up the newspaper and reads. Interior. Church office. Day. James and Pastor Paul sit at the desk facing each other. Handcrafted goods occupy the shelf instead of the canned food and old clothes. Pile of cut-up woods occupy space on one corner of the office. James. What are those woods? Paul points at a few wooden crafts on his desk and smiles. The pile of woods in the corner resembles the crafts on the desk, but apparently are bad makes. James. You made these out of that much wood? Doesn't Jesus teach you to be a good carpenter? Paul nods and opens a folder. He takes a brief look at the file. Paul. So how did it go? James. I kept staring at my wife and she wasn't happy about it. She thinks I've lost it. Paul. What else? James. She's lost it too. She spends over 30 minutes to put on skin lotion every morning. Cindy walks in and stops at the office door with a woman, 29. Mrs. Simmons walks up next to Cindy. Paul. Mrs. Simmons, would you take care of Cindy and her mom? Mrs. Simmons. Yes, I will. And Pastor, we have enough woods for next 3 years? We hardly use the fireplace. Paul. Got it. See you guys later. Mrs. Simmons, Cindy, and her mom walk away. Paul. I think you got it. You paid attention to your wife. She reacted negatively and positively. James. I don't know what was positive about telling me I've lost it. Paul. She wants to look good to you, so she spends 30 minutes to put on lotion. Paul grabs a folder and opens it. Paul. Having relationship is a part of the image God gave us. I'll give you second exercise. Paul flips a page in the file. Paul. 3 things to do. Listen quickly, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Interior. Apartment. Night. James gets up from the dinner table and comes into the living room. Sandra brings dishes to kitchen. Sandra looks at James from kitchen. James reads newspaper. Sandra. I hear you may get laid off. Why didn't you tell me? James takes a moment. James. We don't know what's going to happen yet. Sandra. Honey, I want to know before it happens. James stares at her. Sandra's voice becomes louder. Sandra. I don't want to hear something like this from Colby's wife. Exterior. Apartment. Night. Seen through a window. Sandra talks and James listens. This goes for a while. James comes out with his dog and slams the door. James. Shut up, Sandra. James and the dog take a walk.